All right, everybody. It's April. This isn't an April Fool's joke either. We're coming to you today for the And One podcast. We're going to be talking about preparation to make the move from high school to college basketball. We're going to be talking about women's officiating today, and I'm super excited to have Scott Doberstein joining us. I've known Scotty for years. We've had some great runs on some basketball games in Division III, Division II, and Division I women's basketball. And so Scotty's going to talk about, he's the supervisor of officials in the WIAC, and he's going to be talking to us today about some of the current trends that are happening in Division III basketball and some good news for folks that maybe want to make the transition from high school to college and the path to be able to do that. And Scotty's been doing collegiate basketball for 30 years. He works on the women's side. He's currently working in Division I, II, and III. Scotty's had 2 Final Four appearances on the women's side in Division III, 7 Wisconsin or WNIT tournaments, and 13 WIAC championship games, among dozens of other conference tournaments. He is highly sought out as a camp clinician and has authored 26 articles on officiating for Referee Magazine, and Scotty is the current supervisor of officials for the WIAC. And I've had Scotty at my camps for years when I ran my Dell's camp, and Scotty was always one of the most honest, upfront clinicians that you'll ever get, which is exactly what I always wanted at camp. So being that Scotty's very upfront, he's very honest about things. Scott, what are some of the non-negotiables for you and for other supervisors of officials in regards to transitioning from high school to college officiating, moving through JUCO, NAIA, and NCAA? Like, what do you want to see? What are the non-negotiables?
Thanks for having me, Brian. I appreciate you asking and doing this. I'd say the first thing is looking at it as a ladder. We all start in the lower levels and want to progress our way up. And there's many rungs on that ladder, depending on what your path, is going to take you between high school, college, men, women, boys, girls, all that kind of stuff. And so if we try to skip rungs, if we try to jump ahead, get ahead of ourselves, kind of like back when we were doing freshman and JV, and we're like, we're ready for varsity, and you get a varsity game in high school and they're like, well, maybe I'm not as quite ready as I thought I was because it just looks easy and it's going to just happen. But if you skip the rungs or you try and don't do the process in the order that evolves you into a better official, I think that is very problematic. All of us, started out when we were younger and thought we could do the job. And then the more we're in it, the more we understand we don't know and we learn more. And so that evolving process is huge, and you can't just shortcut it, just like in a lot of things in life. So I'd say, when you talk about non-negotiables, I mean, that's kind of like clear cut and dry, black and white. I'm not sure that's correct. There are certain things that are going to help you have a better chance of getting up those rungs of the ladder. And there's going to be things that are going to either cause you to pause and settle and not get up there or even go backwards. So for sure, if you want to call it non-negotiable, would be double booking, especially at the college level. Whether that's double booking a high school and a college game, whether that's double booking 2 college games. I and several other supervisors caught an official this year double booking, and he no longer works in college basketball. We all cut him loose because you just don't do that. That can happen at the grade school level. I know it happens at the high school level. I did it when I was younger, working high school, but I've never double booked a college game. And so we can't have that going on. Part of that moving up the ladder and stuff is seeing plays. You need experience. The more plays you see, the better off you're going to be, the better referee you're going to be. So you need the reps. It's like any other skill set that you try and learn. The more reps you have, the more likely you are to get it correct and make a name for yourself. I think another big one would be your availability. When you think about your high school schedule, your grade school schedule, you want to give up a whole Saturday, that's fine. You want to go to a half hour away, hour away on a high school night, a weeknight. College basketball is all over the place, and you may have to travel 2 to 3 hours on a weeknight. You may have to travel 4 to 5 hours on a weekend. just to get to the game, do the game, and then drive all the way back. So I've had, this year, many 16-hour days where I leave first thing in the morning. I don't get back till after midnight. Now, those aren't D3 games, but nonetheless, you have to have the flexibility in your day job to be able to accommodate a college schedule. And it's not uncommon for people to break into college and then after several years, especially if they're younger and they have a family and they have kids, say there's just too much. It's too much travel, especially if you're trying to do college or high school alongside that. So you're working 3-4 high school games a week, a college game a week, and before you know it, you're never home, and that's not a good thing either. So you need to put in the time. You need to put in the process of working your way up there. And, some other things that we really worry about on the college side would be your people skills. If you're not good with dealing with coaches, that can be more problematic in a college game than a high school game. And then ball watching is something that we cannot do at college basketball. We got 3 officials out there, and if we have a ball watcher and they can't get over that skill set and learn that, that's going to be pretty much problematic. And then the last one I'll say, because the college game has gotten so much faster, is being in shape and being able to keep up with the players. So we have many officials that might be able to play call. They've been around the block a long time. They got the good skill set. But if they can't keep pace up and down the floor, it doesn't matter, because the coaches are not going to be happy. The players aren't going to be happy. Your partners aren't going to be happy. You will not be in position to make the right call. And, of course, we're a crew out there, so a bad call by one official can sink the whole crew. So we have to have that dependability factor going on in there. So overall, those are things that I think supervisors are looking for, to try and find those kinds of people that meet all of those kinds of standards, if you will. And then if they exceed them or they got other things they bring to the table, that's only going to enhance their ability to get into the college game.
Scotty, when I was working Division III, when I just got started, I remember, still having a full high school schedule, and it was really hard to flip the switch between your high school mechanics and your court coverage and then doing a college game. Is that something you really talk to young people about quite often when you hire them?
Yeah, I mean, they have to understand the time commitments at the college level, again, due to the travel and stuff, but it is so hard to work high school and college simultaneously. I remember doing boys and girls high school and men and women's college. I'm old. This dates me. We don't do this, or you're not allowed to work men and women. But I was working in a week. I could work high school girls, high school boys, men's college, and women's college. And I knew at some point that something would have to give. And then the next thing you know, I'm walking into the lane as the lead administering a free throw. Said, ladies, 2 shots, and it was a high school boys game. And they looked at me, and I'm like, oh, crap, that was not the right thing to say, at that high school game. And so there's going to be a point where you have to figure out and cut the cord. I cut the cord 25 years ago from high school ball because, I just wanted college, and college was the way I was going to go and wanted to go. But it's tough. It is really, really tough on a night in and night out when you're dealing with different rules. You're dealing with different pace of play. You're dealing with different partners in terms of 2-person versus 3-person, or in the college game, you don't know your partners very well, if at all. Depending on the WIAC, you might know most of them, but you're going to work with people you don't know. So we work the system. Whereas in high school, you might have your own crew that you feel comfortable with, and you do things that you would normally never do because your partners know how to read what you're doing, and you get that familiarity. In the college game, you got to work the system, and you work with 2 strangers. It shouldn't matter. You should nail it because you work the system and you're all on the same page doing the same thing. And so it shouldn't matter if you know them or not. So I can honestly say in the last 5 years, if I've worked with the same crew during the same season in more than like 2 games, 3 games, I can count that on one hand. I mean, it just doesn't happen where you end up with the same people on your crew in the same season on a game, whether it's bouncing from league to league. Even within the same league, you're not going to get it typically. So that's why working the system is so important. So if you're in your comfort zone and working high school and thinking this is easy because they know me, I know them, it's a whole different ballgame when you get to college. And so the flipping of the switch is tough. And the only way I can honestly tell a young person wanting to do that is the pregame's got to be paramount. I don't care if you don't pregame in high school, but in that college game, you better show up early, and the pregame better be strong and solid to get your mindset from, okay, this is not high school girls, this is college women. This isn't high school boys, this is college women. And the speed of the game is going to be in between those two. The rules are different, the mechanics are different. And, you know, I've had this happen this year even. I'm reffing, and they're doing a high school mechanic on coverage at the lead. They're not covering the 3-point line outside, and I have to cover it from the trail, and we'll get to immediate timeout, and I'll say, we need to flip the switch here and get into the college game because you just missed your primary in the college women's game. And hopefully nobody knows it, just me and that official, but that can't happen. That shouldn't happen. And yet it's more likely to happen if they're trying to juggle all these different venues in terms of what they're trying to officiate. So I would suggest, and I've said this to young officials, on your way to the game, you're going through everything in your mind that's going to be college related and trying to get the high school stuff out of your mind. You have the issue of calling it tight in a high school in a high school game. It's called a little bit tighter. In a college game, it's called a little bit looser. So if you make a ticky-tack call in a college game, that's not going to be good. But you have young officials that go into a college game thinking, well, this is physical, we don't call a lot. That's not true either. And so if you let them beat up on each other, that's not going to work. So that mindset and knowing what your partners are calling and not calling, there's a different skill set that is hard to turn on and off every night depending on what levels you do.
And Scott, for people who are listening, you've given really, really good advice, but people who are listening might think, holy cow, there really is a lot to go into a college game when you're transitioning from high school. So do you want to talk about some of the things that, as an assigner, things that you can use as teachable moments? Because as I sit here and listen to your great advice, I'm thinking in my own head, okay, if I were to do this, man, I got to make sure I do all this so I don't screw up. So what things on your end as an assigner would you see as more teachable, things that you could live with, that you could work on, that are okay to maybe make mistakes with when you first start out, versus things that like if you see that, you're going to think, okay, you're dismissed right away. We can't have that. So what are the things that you can kind of live with as mistakes, and other things that are like no-goes?
We have to live with mistakes. We all make, there's no question. And I think the best tool that an official can have is to go to camp.
Yep. You
go to camp, and again, I know it's money, and I've been going to camp since 1992. Every year, I've only missed one summer, and it's just something that you have to do. When you go to camp, that's when you're going to learn kind of what you're asking. What is an okay thing to do in a college game that's a high school mechanic or a high school call, and what's not. And you need several camps. Now, that may mean several years if you're only going to one camp a year. There are people that go to 4, 5, 6 camps a year. All right. And that's excessive, and that's not necessary. I don't want anyone to think it is. I don't run my own camp, so I have no vested interest. But I'll be out to 3 or 4 camps this summer looking for officials. And I can tell right away if they can run up and down the floor, if their mechanics are solid, albeit might be a high school mechanic, I know that they're going to be coachable and they got the great qualities, right? But if they're out of shape, if they don't even do the high school, and I know the high school mechanics, even though I don't work high school ball, if they're not even doing those crisply and well, then I'm like, are they going to be able to handle the crispness of the college game? Because we do have to look a little bit more polished. I mean, you've seen high school officials when they're on the floor and they're doing it right, and they look good and they run well, and they just are more believable. And you've watched high school games where you watch people out there like, oh my gosh, that is a varsity official, or you know what I mean? You just can tell that it factor. Well, you go to camp and we're going to be able to see that, and we're going to be able to teach you through it. And I often say this to any camper: if I find something that I don't like or that you're doing incorrectly that really gets under my skin, and you correct it before you leave camp, I know you have a lot of potential. All right. But the person who says, yeah, but, or it doesn't matter, why do you care, and starts to refute that or doesn't change it, and then I see them the next year. I've seen this so many times. The next year they come back, I give them the same things to work on. They haven't changed a thing. They're off my list. It's like, why are you here paying money for this feedback and you're not utilizing it in any way, shape, or form? That's wasting your time and my time. So it's those kinds of intangibles, if you will, those kinds of, I can tell if you're moldable, if you're receptive to that. I call it being a sponge. There are so many officials that show up at camp and they're writing down everything and they're asking questions and they're engaged and, they're correcting things on the spot from half to half. It's like, oh, you did that in the first half. And then they're like, yeah, but I didn't. And I said, you're right. You already corrected it. Those kinds of things we love to work with because they got a vested interest. They're taking maximal energy to do what they came to find out about what to do. And it works really well. So it's not as daunting as I'm making it sound. You know, Brian talks about me being honest. I think we have to be real. I think people just think moving from freshman to JV or JV to varsity or grade school to high school is just this easy, naturally happening thing, but not if you don't work at it, not if you don't care about it, not if you're just showing up for the paycheck. So college, you know, you might be going up incremental steps on the lower levels, but once you go from high school to college, it's a much bigger rung and there's more expectations, there's more competition. And so there's, you know, more finite games, if you will. If you look at the 6th grade through 12th grade schedules and A and B and C, you know what I mean? There's a lot of games and maybe not a lot of officials. We have a more finite number of games and more officials. So you're working to get a better schedule. You know, if you come into the league and I give you 2 games, that's probably not helping you and it's probably not helping me that much. So I don't want to, you know, give you 1 game a year until I figure out if you're good enough. So I want to give you several games, but if you're struggling with getting out of work early, if you're struggling with changing the switch, if you're struggling with working with partners you don't know, that's not going to do well for you. So I don't want to set you up for failure either. So I don't know if I'm answering your question fully, but there's got to be the inner drive that you want to do this and you'll give it your best shot, because if you don't, you probably won't make it.
Yeah. And speaking of being real, I'll be real too. Like, yes, you fully answered my question very well. Oh yeah.
I sometimes digress and forget what the actual question was, but
no, but I mean, this is podcast stuff. So Brian and I are just sitting here leaning back like, oh, keep going. Like this is great. But no, when you say, you know, being coachable and being a sponge, I remember a quote from Tom Izzo, and I'm a huge Izzo fan. Like I'm a Badger fan at heart, but I love Tom Izzo as a coach and how he interacts with his players and whatnot. He had a quote that said, you know, he's so knowledgeable. So it's like, you know, when he goes to clinics and stuff, how can he learn? But he said, when I go to a clinic or when I'm talking with someone, I assume right away that they know more than I do. So then you're more intent to listen and you're more willing to, I mean, you guys are top of the line officials, you and Brian, and you guys are even learning stuff and you're open to criticism and feedback. And that's the main thing that people gotta do. And all the things that you've talked about so far, there's a common ground of you got to be willing to take the advice from the people who not only know what they're doing, but also, you know, you want the best for the officials that you are supervising and the ones that you're assigning. Like you want them to do well. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
And Kent, I still go to camp. I've been working D1 ball for 25 years and I still go to camp. I'm going to Indianapolis this summer. Like I said, I've missed a couple, you know, summers. I missed last summer. Well, we didn't have it last summer because of COVID. But you know what I mean? So, I've been doing this a long time and I'm still learning. I mean, I'm still trying to get up a rung on the ladder. You know, I'm not getting there. I'm maintaining. I'm still on the ladder, but I don't want to fall off the ladder. I don't want to lose my position where I'm at. And I'm trying to elevate, but yet it's not happening, but I'm still working. So, you know, you have to continually learn if you're going to grow and advance. And so, I mean, there's a guy that I know that goes to as many camps as he can every summer, trying to improve, and it's not happening as quickly as he wants. But how can you deny that passion and that ability to just keep coming back when we keep, you know, telling you what you got to work on? It's a good quality to have. Let's put it that way, and that it should transpond in your day job and your family life and everything else. If we're trying to get better and not stay the same, then everybody should win from that.
The thing I love about you, Scotty, as a supervisor and someone I've worked with for a lot of years, is that you have high expectations for everybody. And that's so important because, you know, we're in a place now where we have a little bit of a pay to play mentality, and somebody goes to camp, they pay their money, and they have expectations that, you know, because I paid my money, I'm going to get hired, and that's just not realistic. You have to. I remember Mark Braden had a saying called the Peter Principle, where you've reached your highest level of incompetence, and sometimes officials reach that level and they're just not getting any better. And I think the supervisors need to be able to sniff that out. And
they do.
Yeah, and you've done a really good job of, being able to be very transparent with people about what you expect, and there has to be a progression, and I think that's really admirable. And the WIAC is one of the best leagues in the nation. Yeah.
Rookie trying to do this job, so we're still learning. I'm still learning on this end of it. But I think part of what you're saying is we have this with the internet and all the social media, that we have this instantaneous society where we're getting stuff so fast that we never used to. You'd have to read the paper. You'd have to, go through the phone line. And now you can find out stuff immediately. And so to your point, you show up for camp, you give your money, and you think that's I'm automatically going to get hired. I know of officials that went to camp for 4 or 5 years before they ever got picked up in the WIAC. And yet they were doing college ball and they just weren't where they needed to be. I think if I expect you to be mediocre or average, and you fall short, I got nothing. So if I set your expectations high and you fall short, you're still going to be above average and we're going to be okay. I often tell, part of my pregame is we're going to over communicate tonight. And if we fall short, we've at least communicated. But if I say, let's go out there and, let's try and communicate tonight, and we fall short, we're in the soup, and I'm not calling the supervisor after my game because I did not prepare the crew for maximal effort. Again, we're never going to be perfect. We're never going to get it all right. But if we don't expect excellence from ourselves and our partners, we're not going to get to the level we want to get to. So I'm fine with falling short, but that doesn't mean I'm going to give up and not strive to do it. And so I think a big decision younger officials need to make, if you want to try and make this jump, it's going to take time. It's going to take money. But if you have what it takes, it will pay dividends down the road. And also, if you're going to stay in the high school game or do other things, it's going to pay dividends there as well. There's some transference from being a good college official to other parts of your life, including, people come in with this great resume of working state tournaments left and right and sectional finals and all this kind of stuff. And that doesn't mean you can walk into a gym and call a college women's basketball game. It certainly is not going to hurt you. It's going to help, but that doesn't equate automatically to a 12-game schedule in the WIAC. I have to see you work, and the only way for me to see you work is to go to camp. I have a tough enough time reffing my own schedule, having my own day job, trying to see my officials that I hire or that are on staff, or watch film, see clips from all my crews on nights and all that kind of stuff. I can't go and watch a high school official to see if they're ready for college or if they're interested. They have to come to me, and that's not an egotistical thing. It's just the way it works right now. Is there are camps, supervisors go to camps, and we see as many people as we can, and we start trying to identify people that have a potential path with all those qualities. Are they interested? I've walked up to officials and said, "Are you interested in working the WIAC?" And they're like, "Nope, I'm just here to learn to be a better high school official." Great, that's fine. Other people, "I want to work college," and I watch them work. I'm like, "I wouldn't give you a JV game. I mean, a JV high school game." And you're wanting, you know what I mean? So you don't know what everybody wants. And so I'm just looking to identify people that are interested. Now, hopefully they're reaching out to me and saying, "Will you please watch me?" And, send me an email, whatever. Because it's a job interview, basically, right? I mean, that's what it is. And so it's tough, but just because it's tough doesn't mean it's undoable or that we shouldn't try. So if you have those aspirations, I'm not going to kill your aspirations, but be real when you go. And when supervisors say certain things to you, take it to heart, fix it, and you will start to get on that ladder. But if you don't fix it or you don't care, I got other people that care, and I'm going to take my energies toward them versus someone who, doesn't want to do it.
Scott, you've talked a lot about a lot of the, the intangible things and the must-haves and what you're looking for in an official. And you've provided such good advice for people who, either are currently working on making that jump Or like you said, even if people are trying to be better high school officials, you've given the perspective of, hey, this is what we're looking for in college officials. So if you're, like you said, if you're striving to be as good as a college official and you fall short, then hey, you're still being a really, really good high school official for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. No, so many people say, I might want to get to college. I'm not sure yet, but boy, has my high school games changed from just coming to camp and understanding philosophies versus mechanics versus, you know what I mean? The system we're looking at, what we're caring about. And that's going to equate to just ref and basketball, regardless of what level. Because let's face it, the camps are all high school kids, right? Usually you got to play high school rules. So I got to be able to, figure out, do you know college rules when we get to that point? And we usually want you to use college mechanics with high school rules, which, that's because, again, it's like, so we can screw with your mind so much and we don't try to, but it's like, I got to be able to, if you're chopping time on the rounds and, but those are good tests, right? Those are good ways to figure out, do I have what it takes? And if I'm saying you have a good job, you have a future, if you stick with this, I mean, if that's what you want, that should be so encouraging and you keep coming back and it'll pay dividends. So, I don't want to paint a bad picture here. I hope I'm not, I'm being real, but, it's a process and it just can't be short circuited because you just don't want to put in the time or the effort.
Yeah. And no, the advice you have given is really, really good. So let's take a little step outside of the things that you look for specifically in officials. And the answer to this next question might be, it depends, but I'll ask it anyway and kind of get your, where you're sitting with this. So if an official is working high school and they're already sectional and even state level officials, can they move directly into a conference like the WIAC if they're at that level of high school?
Well, never
say it depends.
Always.
Right?
It depends, but highly, highly unlikely. Look at Brian. Brian's going to spin his
head. Brian's going to get whiplash. Shaking his head no. So, but that's like you said, being real.
I'm going to be real. Yeah,
I'm going to be real. I'm going to go on the WIAC. Give me what's your answer?
So here's it's the ladder. It goes back to the first question being on the ladder. Okay, so we're talking about we had 12 WIAC officials working the NCAA tournament this year in Division III. We had one working the Final Four, which doesn't happen every year. Not a WIAC official works every year, and so part of that ladder is that you're going to have to work lower level D3 leagues and be solid there before you get into the WIAC. All right. So I rank all my officials as R's, U1s, or U2s. Okay. And so in order to just get into the WIAC as a U2, you are working other D3 leagues and you're probably an R or a U1 over there. I'm not going to take a U2 from a D3 conference and make them a U2 in my conference, typically. Now supervisor can differ, right? I can say you're an R and someone else says you're a U2. Yeah, that's personal opinion. That's fine. But I'm hiring people for my league. And if I think you're an R, then, you're going to probably get hired. If you're a U2, you may have to put in the time. But again, that's about seeing plays. That's about being seen. And, supervisors will talk to each other and they'll say, what do you think of so-and-so? And I say, I won't hire them. They don't do that. Oh, I already hired them. Well, that's fine. I mean, I've hired people that they won't hire either. That happens all the time. But we don't want to confuse the official, but it's the beauty's in the eye of the beholder, right? It's what do I look for? What are my go-tos? And so it's highly unlikely that somebody who has not worked any college is going to jump right to the WIAC. They're skipping rungs. Now they might only have to be in other D2 or other D3 leagues for a year or two. If they're that good, it shouldn't take them long to get through the lower levels to get to the WIAC.
But you can't skip.
Yeah, but you can't just jump in. All right. It's kind of like a supervisor will say, I'll never hire anybody I haven't seen work yet. Okay. Now there's an exception to that. What if somebody moves from the West Coast into the Midwest, moves right into Wisconsin? They were working D1, D2, 3 out in the West Coast. And I call up the supervisor and they're an R on all their games. I'm going to take that supervisor's word and I can bring them right in the WIAC without seeing them work. Because I know they've gotten those rungs. They just didn't get them where I could access it and see it. So never say never, never say always. But I watched the state games, and I see some that are really, really good that might have a fit if they got the right attitude and the things we've been talking about. And I've seen some that are at state going, boy, I don't want to say names, but what were we thinking? But part of that is shortage. Part of that's COVID. I mean, our numbers are so reduced. Our pool's much smaller. So we're going to take the best of what we can get. But again, you're coming from a guy who's never worked the state tournament in Wisconsin. I've worked it in Illinois, not the state, semifinal finals, just the sectionals and regionals and cut stuff. But I've never had the aspiration to go to state. I've been on the college track for 25 years, and I put high school away because I couldn't do both. And so I have different goals. Other people have, want to get to Madison. Great. Love it. But make sure you can handle the college game while you're doing that. And if you can, then more power to you, and you're going to be very successful doing both.
Scotty, we learned a lot of information from you. Obviously, you're very passionate about what you do. Nobody's going to question that for sure. What's going to be when you retire from your athletic training job? And I know you're well respected in athletic training because one of the things I love about officiating college basketball is the people that you run into. And I can't tell you how many former students of yours I've run into that they just love you. And they say,
Thanks.
He's a great professor. What's going to be your legacy when you walk away from college assigning and from college officiating in general?
Yeah, I think getting away from college officiating is going to hopefully come sooner than getting rid of assigning. Who knows? The coaches may fire me, and I could just Yeah, well, I won't walk away. I might be asked to leave.
No, you won't.
So my legacy, it kind of revolves around the things we've been talking about. It's about being ethical. It's about being moral. It's about striving to be better than you think you can be, excellence. I would like people to say that by my interacting with them, they became a better person or a better official. I mean, I don't know that anyone can ask for more than that, but when I'm on a game and it goes well and the crew has a good night and we're all happy, it's about those relationships, because I don't remember many plays, if you will, over the years. I remember the people. It's like when I was the head athletic trainer here and people got hurt. I didn't remember if we won or lost the game. I knew who got hurt that game. I knew who I took care of that game, but I couldn't tell you who won or lost. In the games I've reffed, and it's got to be in the thousands by now, all levels, I don't remember who won and lost. I don't remember key games in terms of, I was thinking back to my Final Fours in D3. I know my partners. I can remember the pregame. I can remember the postgame. But up and down the floor during the game, I hardly remember a single damn thing. But I remember the people I was with. And it means we had a good time. It means regardless of how crappy the game might have gone, I still remember the people. I don't remember all that other stuff. And so if I can walk off the floor and everybody feels good about us as a crew, I think that's, did I leave it better than I found it? Did I help people? Did I pay it forward? All those cliches that we hear. I mean, I like what I do. I try to do it to the best of my ability, no matter what role I'm in, day job, family, officiating, assigning. I feel still young, but who knows? Health can go in a blink of an eye. And so you got to be ready to shift gears if you're dealt a different set of cards than you were planning on it. So I guess that's where I would put that answer for that question.
That's a great answer, Scott. And I just got one more thing to ask you. Since this is called the And One podcast, it's kind of a cool name, right? Like that. You're not going to see a basketball game. Very few basketball games. There's not at least one and one. But what qualifies for you in women's college basketball? And I think I know the answer to this because I've worked with you a lot. What's an and one in a women's game?
I'm not sure I know your technical rule. Are you wanting?
Yeah, like if you're going to call an and one in a women's college basketball game, what's got to happen? Like there's contact on just about every drive.
Yeah. Well, they have to have gathered the ball. They've had to started that habitual motion prior to the and this came up on the Final Four in the men's game. That guy got called after on the gather. He's making a step. This was near the end of the Duke North Carolina game, I believe.
Yeah, I remember that.
And they're steering toward the men have a different rule. His ball was not going upwards, so that's not a shot. in our game, as soon as she gathers, no matter, the dribble head to end, she gathers. If she continues on in her layup, it's got to be a quality foul. It's not going to be a touch foul. We can't have and ones that are just touch fouls. And so that would be my answer. But I did not know the men's rule because I'm thinking that's an and one. Now they're going to get it to, potential tie game with a free throw, and they're waving it off. And Sterator is saying, nope, that's not. So
yeah, it's different, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's the thing, though. In order to have an and one, and this goes down to Pee Wee basketball all the way up to the NBA. In order to have an and one, the ball has to go in.
Yeah.
Ball has to go,
for that one.
Right?
The ball. I love when players
they miss. Yeah, they miss.
Say,
They go, and one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One.
Oh.
The ball hasn't even gone in yet.
Yeah.
Like, what the heck?
Yeah. I'll stare players down on the bench when they're yelling and one from the bench. I will turn and look at them and don't, or, the ball never lies or whatever, all that crap. It's like, come on.
Ball don't lie.
Yeah.
Steve Wallace,
Yeah.
ball don't lie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, no, but I didn't know the men's rule. I was loving to hear that explanation on what they determine, because to me, that's harder for them to decide than for us on the gather, right?
Sure.
She picked it up and started versus if I get fouled if I get fouled as soon as I grab it and it's not going upward, that to me is a shot, so just interesting. But the men's rules are so different from the women's, and then the high school different from all. And, I really feel like if you can do both, and there are plenty of officials who can switch that switch every night, that's a class. I mean, that's good. That ability, that skill set. I never had it. That's why I had to give up high school, because I just didn't do it.
Well, this is going to be a wrap for the And One podcast. It's Brian Kenny, Kent Meehee, and Scotty Doberstein. And Scotty, we appreciate your time, and thanks so much for your hard work. And I'm looking forward to seeing you in June at the Marshfield camp. And
yep, we'll be there.
We'll be there looking for the talent pipeline.
Yep.
That's exactly.
Yep.
So we're both interested in the same thing.
Yeah, exactly. Well, anyone who likes basketball is looking for more talent. And I've often said, we need someone to replace us. We're all going to get old and get out of the game. We gotta breed our own, people that are going to come up behind us and take our spots. If we're not doing that, then we're not doing the game of service. So I appreciate you. This was fun.
All right. Have a great night, everyone.
All right.
We'll talk
Take
soon.
care. Yep.
Take care.
See ya. Thanks.